Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I am a little hesitant to do this video, or I guess I was. Not necessarily because I'm nervous or like afraid to share my story, but just I know I'm still new to YouTube and I don't have a whole lot of subscribers, but you guys did request this video, or at least some of you did, and you said to do it now, and then when I have more people, reshare it, which I thought was a great idea because who knows, maybe someone right now needs to just hear this, the vulnerability of sharing your story. So I've got my emotional support coffee, and I'm just going to basically share my testimony with you guys, share basically how I got to where I am today, the good and the bad, and yeah, I hope you guys like it. If you do, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. When it comes to sharing my testimony, I've always struggled just because I feel like I don't really have one. Honestly, everybody has one. Like, I have one, you know, if you're a Christian, if you're a believer, you have one. And they're all important. They're all very special. Whether you had a giant moment in your life of basically a 180 or not really, that's okay. So I've kind of struggled with sharing mine just because of that. Again, not because I'm nervous, but just because I feel like I don't have a huge moment. I feel like for me, it was multiple different moments in my life where I've noticed things have changed and that I guess I've grown. So a little backstory, I was very blessed to grow up in a Christian home, Christian family, being in church basically every Sunday, Wednesdays, going to church camps. I was in Christian schools for basically all of schooling. I think there were like 2 or 3 years that I was in a public school or I was homeschooled or whatever, but for the most part, I was in a Christian private school, which I was very blessed for that because I know they are not cheap. So I'm very thankful because in a Christian school, you have Bible classes, you're surrounded by Christian teachers. Some schools do chapels once a week, and you have like a little Bible session type thing. So I can look back and say I am just super blessed that I grew up that way, because I could have just easily not grown up that way. I did technically get saved when I was about 5 years old. I don't remember much. I just remember that my cousin was in my room with me and she prayed with me, and basically I gave my heart to the Lord. And obviously before 5, like, you don't really remember a whole lot, but we are born sinners. We are born rebellious. So I wasn't a perfect little 5-year-old, but I feel like over the years, I guess I didn't know that once you're saved, which, well, I did know, but I guess it just didn't grasp up here. Because I basically got saved. Like, it's a joke in my family that I got saved like 20 times so far, because I, got saved when I was 5, but then anytime I'd go to church and I felt like I needed to give my heart to the Lord, I basically did that. And at church, when you do that, like, you typically get like a Bible or whatever. So I would take the Bible with me when I left church, and my family would be like, "Oh, did you get a new Bible?" And I'd say, "Yeah, I got saved today." And like, they just thought it was funny because they were like, "You're already saved, like, you don't have to do that." But and anytime I tell people that, they're like, "Oh, that's so cute, like, that's funny." And I do remember my mom telling me, like, once you're saved, you're saved. You don't have to do it over and over again. And I think it hit when I was about 11 or 12. I was in church on a Sunday morning in like the youth group, and I really felt like a tug on my heart which again, I was already saved, but I felt like I needed to get saved again, I guess. And just really felt far from the Lord. I wanted to like give my heart to him. And so I went up and I prayed and did that, got a Bible. And of course I told my family, and they thought it was funny, but my mom basically said, well, I guess you could say that like you rededicated your life. You didn't get saved technically. You just kind of gave your life to the Lord, surrendered it to the Lord, maybe because you weren't before. And I really liked that. So I kind of have added that to my testimony and just said, I rededicated my life to the Lord when I was about 11 or 12. And then I got baptized, I think that either that year or the next year, with my brothers and my dad, and which was really cool because I think it was on Mother's Day or Mother's Day weekend. And it was right before we like moved to Florida. I am from West Virginia, but we live in Florida. We have been for about 10 years, I believe. Yeah, 10 years. But anyway, we moved here and I did a year of homeschool extension, and then I went there full time in 9th grade all the way to graduation for senior, 9th through 12th grade. And I think after that, like, obviously going into high school, high schoolers deal with insecurities. It's all different. You're growing. There's lots of hormones. And I would say like 9th grade was good, but then 10th grade kind of hit for me, and I dealt with a lot of insecurity, a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, I guess. I think it had to do with that the people I went to school with, I also saw at church. So like anytime I'd go to church, I'd get really nervous because I knew that the people that I saw at school, that like I got teased by, whatever, that were gonna be there. So anytime I went to church, I basically got really like anxious and like I don't want to see them, I don't want them to see me, blah blah blah. So a lot of insecurity. Like there were moments where I literally cried on the way to church because I didn't want, that was my dryer. Because I didn't want to go to church, or I didn't want to be seen by people, or you name it, basically insecurity, whatever. And I did deal with being teased a lot at school, and I don't want to say like made fun of, but like teased. But that insecurity just lasted that whole time, and I went on a missions trip to the Dominican Republic. I think I was 15, 16, so like 10th grade. And I remember one night about to like go to practice, because we had to practice like our skits and music and all of that before we went on the trip. And I remember like trying to figure out what I was gonna wear, and I really struggled with my self-image and like just being so afraid and like of what I was wearing, like what people would think or whatever, and like a t-shirt and leggings or whatever. Like I was so afraid that I remember my room was literally covered with clothes because I had changed my outfit like a bazillion times, and I was in tears. I was frustrated. I was so sick to my stomach because I was so afraid and anxious and all of that. And I remember that like around that time of my life, I did get kind of suicidal, like just mentally. I never tried anything, but in that night, I trying to figure out what I was gonna wear and everything, I kind of like hit myself, I guess you'd say, like punched my legs or whatever, just because I was so upset. And I didn't want to go, but I knew I needed to because, I was going on a trip. And I remember going on that trip. I got sick on that trip, like very, very sick. And I came back thinking like, maybe I shouldn't have gone on that trip. Maybe like it was the wrong timing. Maybe I wasn't ready. I don't know. Then moving on, I actually started my YouTube channel between 10th and 11th grade, or maybe 11th grade. I started my YouTube channel, which really means that you got to put yourself out there And I think that kind of helped with confidence. It helped me not necessarily feel like I was in a crowd or anything, like I felt cool, like I was part of the cool kids, but like I felt more like I fit in. I became more confident. I felt like people respected me a little bit more and like appreciated me a little bit more because they knew I did YouTube and they knew that's what I wanted to do with my life. So I did that 11th and 12th grade, but then senior year was probably the best of high school. I absolutely loved senior year. I loved school. I literally didn't want to graduate because I loved school. And then fast forward into college, I had another moment of, I don't want to say insecurity, but a lot of anxiety. The first 2 months of college, there's a saying that like you have the freshman 15, you gain 15 pounds, but I actually lost 15 pounds. I got really sick. I got bronchitis and an upper respiratory infection multiple times throughout those 2 months. And I was working a job, I was doing school full time, but I could not really eat due to me being sick, but I probably got sick due to me not being able to eat from being so anxious all the time. And I lost weight very quickly, and I was just, I don't want to say miserable, I just was like upset at all times. And like sometimes I couldn't even pinpoint where my anxiety was coming from. It was just anxious. Like I'd start eating something and then all of a sudden it hit me and I'd be like, nope, I'm done eating. Like I'm good. Like it just made me like super nauseous and I just didn't want to eat anything. And the anxiety did, like, I don't want to say 100% was because of a relationship, but probably was a huge part of the anxiety, because once I ended that relationship, the anxiety like got so much better. The job I had, I obviously no longer have. When I left that job, my anxiety got much better. I think it was a mixture of those two things, the job and the relationship and all of that. Like both of those are gone and I'm not anxious anymore. But so that was up until 2020. Yeah, 2020. That was when COVID hit. So I ended things with that person like December of 2019, and I was like, okay, I do want a husband, but I just need to give my life truly to the Lord and focus on just being single and living for Him and not trying to find somebody, and just focus on becoming more confident, being myself, like being secure in myself, all of that, but also, in Christ. And I think it was March or April that I met my now husband. I met him at church. We did meet the week that COVID hit and everything shut down, and we had to text and Snapchat for 3 months before we could go on our first date, and it was crazy, but also great. Anyway, that's a whole other story on its own. But yeah, I met my husband then, and I would say we got married last November. So we dated for about 2.5 years before we got married. And I would say within those 2 years, I didn't really have anxiety. There was a point where I did because of a job I had, and I'd wake up super anxious. I'd cry because I didn't want to go to that job, but I was working there for the money. And literally, I feel like I had PTSD from that job, because after I left that job, I still had nightmares and dreams that I went back and worked at that job, and it made me have really bad PTSD to the point where I got deja vus all the time, and not just normal deja vus. I'd have a deja vu and then I'd almost have a panic attack for some reason, because it'd be oh my gosh, I was there. And I would it for some reason would take my breath away, and I'd just be I'm gonna pass out. So that was fun, but thankfully I think that had to do with the job and everything. So when I left the job and the whole like PTSD of that job went away, I no longer had deja vus or panic attacks or anxiety or anything. Like, we're good. So I feel like, again, there is no moment in my life where I just, 180 went from this to now I'm saved, forgiven, freed by Jesus. Like, I didn't have that moment, but I know that those moments in my life where I dealt with a lot of anxiety, dealt with a lot of insecurity, I had to lean on the Lord, and I grew in my relationship with Him because of that. I know that there's testimonies of people who like are doing drugs and all of this stuff, and then they are like, I need something more, and they find Jesus and they're saved, and it's like their testimony is like, oh my goodness, like that's insane. I feel like I don't have that, but again, I'm blessed to be able to say I don't have that I never had to go through that. Sure, my moments in my life, like when I was very insecure and suicidal, I literally remember praying that the Lord would take me because I didn't want to deal with it anymore. I didn't want to feel that way anymore, which thankfully He did not answer that prayer. And I am still here today. But yeah, that's where we are today. Again, I feel like just over the years, I've had those things that not necessarily are like disastrous things, like insecurity. I feel like all high schoolers go through that, and trying to build confidence, and maybe girls that age are wanting to get married and being in relationships maybe that they shouldn't be, and like, but it's not like the end of the world disastrous kind of thing. But it is something that God uses for good. It is things that the devil, that Satan meant for evil, and God took it and turned it into good for his good and His glory. And it is part of your story. It's part of your testimony to be able to say, I was in this pit and now I'm freed. I don't have anxiety anymore. I don't have panic attacks anymore. I don't have PTSD anymore, like I have joy. I have the joy of the Lord. I have the Holy Spirit. So yeah, I guess I can just say I'm blessed that I am past that point. Obviously life is not going to be perfect, from here on out, but I'm trying to figure out how to go from here because it's technically my story, and I feel like my story is just a progression because, when you get saved, it is not, you may have had a 180 from something horrible to now you are free and saved and you have Jesus. Like, you may have had that moment in your life, but if you're just a Christian in general, like, your relationship with the Lord is not, okay, I'm saved and like I'm good and that's it, like we're done. It's a process, literally a lifelong process for literally the rest of your life. It is a process to grow closer to the Lord, to become more like Him every single day, to put away your own selfish needs and desires and wants, especially when you get married. And it is just a lifelong process that I feel like in my story that I can say those moments that seem so horrible, when I was down in the pit, that, I was dealing with a lot, and that obviously was a bad time in my life, but I can use that to say that God is so good, He is so faithful, and that I have grown in Him, I've grown in my relationship with Him. I, not to be like boastful or anything, but like, I have become more like Him. I'm more confident in myself. I know who I am as a child of God. I, am not afraid to be around people anymore. And now I'm still not a big like party person. I don't like to be around a lot of people, but I'm also not afraid to go to church. I'm not afraid to see people that I know, because I've built my confidence, because, you know, I have my security and my joy and confidence in the Lord rather than an outfit or whatever. But yeah, if you guys have a similar story where you feel like you didn't really have anything big and crazy happen in your life, just remember that your story is your story. It is still very special. It still means something to God, and it should mean something to you, because it's literally how you got saved and how you found Jesus, and you should want to share that. You should share that, and you should be proud of it. Not like in a boastful way, but like you should be proud of it that you did grow up in a Christian home, or you know, you didn't have some crazy life before you found Jesus. Like you had great parents, you had a loving family, you had a Christian home, whatever that may look like for you. Be confident in your story. Be thankful for how your story turned out and how it is. And don't be afraid to share it. Don't be afraid to tell people how God has worked in your life, because that is your story, and He literally wants you to share it. He wants you to share it, not only for you, but for His good and His glory. Because again, whatever the devil and Satan meant for bad, for evil, God can turn that around and turn it for good, for His good and glory. And I just want to remind you of that. And if you guys are wanting more heartfelt sit down videos, let me know, because I kind of like them. I was just sitting here on my floor, and I think it's just very simple and easy to just share my heart with you guys. So if you are interested in that, let me know. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos. I will see you guys very soon.